Hmm. Hey, Rob, can you hear me?
Can you hear me, Doug?
I can hear you now.
Okay, great.
I'm gonna see. Let's see. I'm gonna make you the host. Oh, can you give me? I guess. Can you give me screen sharing? I guess I disabled screen sharing unless you're the host. I can reclaim host too.
Yeah, go ahead. You should be able to share now.
Oh, sorry. Share. And then see if I make you host again. I still have sharing. Awesome.
Okay. All right. Well, let's give some people some time, and
Yeah.
I'll kick things off in a few minutes here.
Cool. I have the recordings on, and I'm also live streaming to YouTube because we can, and that's cool.
Okay. How'd you do that?
So there's a setting inside Zoom that says, do you want let your people? So Abhishek had to turn that on because he's the admin, but you can turn on live stream to YouTube, and then in the Zoom settings, there's like a more options or something like that, and one of them is turn on streaming to YouTube.
So turns
Is it
out that
because
the YouTube live stream is a little behind.
It
I
is.
just-
Welcome to the world of live streaming. I can tell you why that is if you really care.
is it going to your channel, the
It's going
unSkript
to the
channels?
unSkript channel. Yeah.
Okay, that's cool.
And there's usually when you live stream, there's usually about a 15-second lag to a live stream.
Gotcha.
I noticed yesterday I did the live stream as a test and then put it onto Slack, and there was a 15-second lag to YouTube and then another 15-second lag to Slack.
Hmm.
So going forward, should we be using the YouTube streaming? Because I guess if it's a 15-second lag, then that can't be an interactive conversation.
That's why they use chat in YouTube. because by the time you've written the chat, like maybe I've moved on, but I can say I'll get to your question in a second. And so YouTube, there's no way for anyone else to join with video. That's where Zoom kind of has its awesomeness, right?
Okay, we'll just give 2 more minutes here till 5 after, and then we'll jump into it. Actually, Doug, can you stop the recording
Yeah.
and then restart it when we actually start, so that we don't have to like cut this somehow, cut all this dead time?
Oh, it's super easy, but I mean, I'm happy to do
Oh,
that.
okay. All right, if it's easy, that's fine.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get going here.
Awesome.
All right, welcome everybody to the demo hour, weekly demo hour with unSkript. We are lucky to have Doug here from unSkript to be able to take us through the demo today. Just as a quick recap up front here, what we're here to do is just help people understand more about how either SREs or tech support or customer support folks that are in technology kind of roles can really kind of reduce the overall busy work that they have in their day. That's what really unSkript is focused on, is helping make that happen as a company. And so we're going to be working over the next number of weeks here. There's really no end in sight to really demo for everybody the different kinds of use cases that might be useful using technology like unSkript's technology to be able to, again, cut that busy work in your day. The first use case that we are going to show today, or Doug is going to show today, is a use case around AWS cost optimization. He's going to walk us through how using the unSkript tool actually can help folks to make sure they don't get those unfortunate bills at the end of the month where you have skyrocketing AWS costs. We know that there are a number of tools out there that may or may not help with those kinds of situations, but we feel like there's maybe a little bit different approach here that could help smaller companies, potentially medium-sized companies, and even large companies out in the field today. So with that, I'll be the moderator for the show today. Doug will be our captain of the ship. Will be taking us through the use case itself, and then I'll pop in here in and out to ask questions and then take questions from either the chat or you can pop in live too over the phone here, or over the voice to get our attention, and we can open the lineup to make sure that you guys have an opportunity to ask those questions. So with that, the first 10 minutes or so, 15 minutes, so Doug's going to walk us through it. So with that, I'll turn over to Doug.
Great. Thanks for having me. And let's go through some cost optimization runbooks that we have built inside of unSkript. And so unSkript is a runbook engine. It's built on top of Jupyter Notebooks. And I have 3 runbooks here that I'm going to show you on how we will work with AWS cost and usage reports. So built inside AWS, a lot of people complain about their AWS bills. Today's May 31st, and tomorrow on Twitter, invariably there's going to be somebody talking about, oh my gosh, my bill was something much larger than I expected it to be. And what these runbooks here that I'm going to show today are daily alerts. And so these daily alerts will let you know within 24 hours, 48 hours of a big jump in the change in AWS costs. And so because if you get alerted, for example, if you found out on May 15th that there was a big jump and you could mitigate that on May 17th, you're going to say, I'm back. Can you see me? I can't hear you, Rob. You're on mute. I apologize for
I didn't know if it was you or me, so I
that.
maybe just start from the top.
We'll just start from the top. That'll be great.
Yeah.
Yeah, my kid ran in just as I started talking, so I froze for a second. So again, I'm Doug Sillers, and we're going to talk through 3 runbooks here that work on cost and usage at AWS. One of the biggest concerns that people have when they start after they've worked in the cloud for a while is,
Hey, Doug,
yes,
you're actually showing the YouTube interface, so I just want to make sure
I'm
that
sharing the wrong screen. Like here I am. All right, now I'm sharing the right screen.
There you go. Okay, from the top.
From the top, here we go again, and we can just do a couple edits, no problem. So thanks for having me. I'm Doug Sillers. We're going to walk through 3 runbooks here, and these 3 runbooks are built inside Jupyter Notebooks, and they will use the AWS cost and usage report to send off alerts on a daily basis if there's a large change in your AWS bill. And so the AWS cost and usage report is something you set up inside your AWS account. If you just run a quick internet search, you'll find instructions. AWS has really cleared instructions on how to set that up. And what happens is you can set it up to update hourly or daily or monthly. I have ours set up to update daily. And this is for our dev environment. There's not that much going on, so there's no reason to update it hourly. So we only do it daily. So the first thing that we need to do is AWS dumps all of the data every 6 or 12 hours or something like that into an S3 bucket. And so this first runbook here is inside unSkript. And what this is doing is it's going to grab the data from S3 and get that data into our Redshift cluster. And so there's several steps here. There's some input parameters here, and we'll walk through what this runbook does. So our Redshift cluster is called Doug Billing 3. The database is called dev. It's stored at US West 2, and my username is AWS user Doug Redshift. So these are parameters that are sent into the runbook. And as we run the runbook, these parameters will be used as variables. So the first thing we're going to do is get the ARN for that secret, for that user. So if I run that, it's going to output the secret. And so that is stored. If we see here, it's using AWS, and it is putting that into a variable called secret ARN. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to create 2 queries. So To import the data into Redshift, we have to run 2 queries, and we'll see them here. The first one is we're going to truncate the table, which means delete all of the rows in the table. And then the second one is we're going to copy all of the rows from S3 and put it back into the table. If we just kept adding to the table, like all of the data for the first would be updated again on the second and on the third and on the fourth, and there'd just be a lot of data in there. So this is an action here. And the reason I have this as programmatically is that the name of the table is AWS billing year month. So right now it's AWS billing 2023 05, right? And so by doing this dynamically, I generate the table name automatically. So that's the query. The first thing I do is I truncate the table. And so that says we're truncating the table. We make sure that that truncation has been finished. And here it says that it finished. That first query finished, right? We don't want to start adding to the table before the first one is finished. And now we're going to put all of the data into the table. And this takes a couple seconds, but it will be done by the time we make it to the next runbook. So the next runbook is going to break down our AWS costs by day and by product. And what we're going to do is we're going to generate a chart so we can see what's happening day over day. But then finally, we're also going to, if there's a large change between yesterday and today, we're going to send an alert to Slack. And so here's where we build the chart. I'll just minimize the code here for a second. And then if there's an alert, we'll build an alert and we're going to post an image to Slack. That image to Slack is going to have the chart, and it's also going to say, hey, your Redshift costs went up by X%, or your EC2 costs went by X%. So let's run through the runbook. Same things we need. Again, input parameters are almost all exactly the same because we're using the same Redshift cluster. We're going to get the secrets again. We're going to create our query. And so this is just getting the cost and all of the products and all of by day and by the sum of the cost for each one of those days. We run the query. And when you run the query, you get a UUID for that query. And then we can get the details. We can see that this query has finished. And there's 509 rows in it. That's because we're at the end of the month, right? This is going to be a pretty full table. So now we can get the results. So now this is going to Redshift and sucking in those 509 rows. And we're going to put them into a data frame so we can build a chart. And so here's our chart of all of the different products at AWS by day and how much money in US dollars we spend every single day inside our demo account. And so you can see, I think this red one is Redshift. It had a little bit of fluctuations because we were playing around with turning our Redshift on and off with some runbooks earlier this month. Everything else has been pretty steady, and most of them are under $10 a day. So generally, we don't worry about them so much, right? If we had gotten an alert, we might, look into it. But, if something jumps from $5 a day to $10 a day, not such a huge concern. What you can see, however, is in the first week of May, it's pink. And if you look over here in the table, there are a couple pinks. I happen to know this is EC2. As for most companies, EC2 costs are the greatest costs in your AWS infrastructure. That is exactly the same for unSkript in this account. And you can see, like on the 5th or 6th, it jumped from $25 a day to $73 a day. And that generated an alert. And so the alert came, it posted in Slack, and we could look to see what was going on. And we'll walk through the next steps we did as our remediation after we got the alert. But this is again, just a different version of the same chart, just zoomed in to see if the fluctuation's under $10. And I built this one just because, I wanted to see what was going on. There were a lot of lines that had very little cost, and I wanted to see them all. And then
Doug, Just a quick question for those
Yeah.
that are new to the world of notebooks, Jupyter notebooks and runbooks.
Yep.
In terms of the charts here, are these charts just kind of like baked into the product somehow, or how are you getting the visual representations put in here like that?
Yeah, so it's Python code. And so this Redshift result, we can see what the Redshift result looks like. So what I can do here is we can print, let's print the result, right? And so it's going to take a second to run, but we're going to have like a dictionary of results. So that isn't a chart, right? So what we need to do is take that dictionary of results, right? This is going to be really long now, so excuse me while I scroll through a huge data. What we do is we take that data and we throw it into a pandas data frame, which is a common way of manipulating data inside Python. If you've never used the data frame, I think of it a lot as like a pivot table in Excel, right? Or Google Sheets, right? It's just a way to like manipulate the data quickly and be able to build charts. And then matplotlib is a library that's really commonly used inside of inside Python to build charts. And so we're just building a chart based on the data that's in that pivot table. And we do some fun stuff here just to make sure that we have the legend over here on the right side. But yeah, then if you actually look, we actually save this file as a JPEG, and that's for the alerting. If you want to send an image to Slack, you need to send a JPEG. And so in this case, we're saving it as a JPEG, and then we can send that to Slack in the last step after we've built the alert.
So just as a recap, grabbing data from AWS here and bringing it into to kind of a single place instead of the user having to go out and do a bunch of busy work to kind of collect these metrics and data and kind of create their own charts somewhere else or look into AWS's charts, but you're just going to bring it all in one place here.
The cost and usage report collects it, but then we actually have to put it in a database, run the queries, and then see what the result is. And by automating that, it just takes away all of those steps. It's not something that takes a large amount of time because we just do it. And then we'll scroll past these charts. When I send an alert, I usually just send the last 7 days. And the reason for that is, when you have 30 points along the x-axis, it gets pretty busy. So if you just send the last 7 days, it's a little bit easier to look at. And so that's what I'm doing here. So then the last two steps of this runbook, one is to build an alert. Big changes, any big changes. And as you can see, nothing has really happened over the last 3 days. The 31st is really, really low because it just hasn't updated yet. And then the last step is to post it to Slack. And in this case, what this does is we all sort of understand the idea of alert fatigue, especially if you're an SRE or in DevOps, and you don't want to get an alert if nothing's happening. And so what we have here is we have a start condition, and it will only fire if the alert value is true. And inside the alert, if there is something here, we make alert true, otherwise it's false. So we don't send the chart saying, hey, there's been a big change in your AWS costs if nothing's happening. So we can just assume if we don't get an alert, everything is good. If we look into here, I actually have it doing, I turn alert to true 2 different times. One is if there was a big change in the code or in our costs, but I also just send it on Monday, every week on Monday, right? Just to show that the chart is still being generated every Monday. Slack gets hey, it's Monday. Here's what the AWS costs looked like last week. Just sort of like hey, we're still alive, we're still here, and we're still looking sort of alert. So this is the AWS product cost. As we could see here, there was a big jump. And so I got an alert on whatever, May 6th or 7th, when this jump happened. And so what I did is the next thing I did is I went into this runbook Very, very similar run book. And I'm just going to, if you come up here and click this, it's just going to run everything all at once. It's very much the same thing. It's a slightly different query. The only difference in this query is that it is going to just look at EC2, the different costs inside EC2. So when I saw that jump to like $70, I thought, did we spin up a bunch of instances? And what this is showing is all of the cost we have for all of our different instances every single day this month. And as you can see here, about the 5th, 6th, or 7th, no significant change here. And so this was not the team spinning up instances. What it ended up being is, digging a little further, is now I went into AWS, into the billing reports, and I found that it was data transfer. So I'm actually in the process of building another runbook that would just, again, make a separate query to look at data transfer costs so that you get an alert when there's a large amount of data transfer coming in and out of your system. It was also expected. We were expecting this large data transfer to occur over a couple of days and cost $70 for those 2 or 3 days that it happened. So it wasn't a big deal. However, if it had been an unexpected cost, these runbooks would have caught the issue, and we could have gone and remediated it within a day or so, instead of finding out on June 1st that there was a huge change in price. So these are sort of those early alarm systems that you might have inside you if you're worried about costs, just to look at the way you're dealing, the way the team is using your AWS environment to make sure that your costs aren't getting out of hand.
And so what I would also add to that then, Doug, I think, is that these are, in this case, alarm type setups, but also the diagnostics that go with it.
Mm-hmm.
So you're kind of setting up the fact that, hey, yep, it looks like there's something funky happening on EC2, which is the what. But the bigger question always becomes why. And
Exactly.
what you're trying to show here, I guess, more than anything, is a number of different steps that anyone would normally take, typically as diagnostics, to figure out the answer to the why.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of doing that one-off manually all by yourself, you're kind of just bringing that all into the single place all at once, so that somebody can just have those answers right away and then be able to determine, okay, yeah, it wasn't people adding EC2 instances, it was actually just the data transfer in this case.
Exactly. And by giving you all of that, sort of pre-work information, right? Number one, letting you know something's wrong, but then also sort of like filling in the backstory a little bit, right? We know something's wrong, but we know, and here's some data to help you understand what's going on, so that you can then further refine your way towards that solution.
Great, makes sense. You did mention earlier that there was some level of like scheduling ability here.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was like once a day some of these things are run for you. Is there ability to run these kinds of run books or other kinds of run books in a much more in a quick, like a faster way? So every second, every hour, every minute, every whatever is an interval.
Yep. So if you come to events up here, I actually have the tab open, but we'll just open it up this way. So if we come to events, you can see all of the different events. So you can you can have alarms. So if an alarm comes from Datadog, you could kick off a runbook to run to get more information or help you remediate the situation. I don't have any set up in my account, but I have a bunch of scheduled runbooks here. And you can see I have the update the Redshift database runs at 1 o'clock every single day. And then the product cost runs at 110 and the EC2 cost runs at 115. And, it's just daily, and I have them scheduled out just a little bit from one another. They probably could go, this one needs to populate the database first, and then these two could probably run at the same time, but it doesn't really matter, right? I have them set up just to run daily. You can see I have another one that's checking the DNS every hour. And then the last one I show here is that I have scheduled as a GitHub nudge And this just looks for issues that haven't been run recently, or issues that have been hanging out for a while that we need the person who's assigned to resolve the issue. So this just sends an alert to them on Slack saying, hey, Doug, this issue's 2 weeks old. Can you work to resolve that? It's sort of I guess it's more of a product management automation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Letting people know that, hey, we're watching these pull requests and these issues, and they've been sitting a while. So like, hey, can you take a look at them? So, and if you get added, maybe you're more likely to go in and look at those and resolve those issues.
So for you, you've created a series here, 5 or so scheduled run books that run at different times every day.
Mm-hmm.
But you also could be kicking off run books via alarms from a Datadog or a New Relic or whoever your observability platform is at this moment in time.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay. And then another question for you I'd have is, we looked at the EC2 instance or the EC2 example of cost spiking,
Right.
and then kind of the steps that you would go through to kind of diagnose what the problem is. If somebody, as an example, instead of EC2, it was Redshift,
Mm-hmm.
would there be different diagnostics that you would run kind of in the background?
Yeah, that's a good question. So let's go back. This one, if you actually look, you can see that we had some fluctuation in our Redshift over this past month, right? And we got alerts saying that there were changes in our Redshift. When I looked at the graph and saw that there was big changes, and I saw that it went from, I don't know, $6 to $10, I wasn't so worried about it. I sort of just like let it roll. But if it had been a significant change, I might have gone and gone. I don't have a run book to solve that at this point. But what I would have done is gone into Amazon, into the cost and usage report, and looked to see what the changes were, whether there was a new cluster rolled out, or a whole lot of queries were being made, or there's a lot of data transfer. Some of these things would lead to changes in cost. So we could try to identify those things. And then if we were seeing that there was a lot of data or a lot of fluctuation in our Redshift cost, we could build another run book. Sort of like I built the EC2 one, we could build one for Redshift that could then say, if that Redshift change alert goes off, we could actually then get a second alert that says, looks like those Redshift changes were all a new cluster that rolled out, or it was the number of queries quadrupled day over day. And then we can go back to the team and say, like, did we know those are going to quadruple? There are times, right, that our costs are going to go up in AWS. We're a company that's reliant on the cloud, and as we grow, our costs are going to increase. What the goal of this is just to identify when there are changes. We can then go back to the team and say, are we expecting these to increase? And that's fine. But if it's an unexpected change, then we can go and remediate it right away.
So in this case, you're going to be looking at different variables or different cost elements of the AWS cost report, right? So whether it's queries or data transfer or clusters, different than what you'd look for EC2, which ultimately I think of them as different diagnostics that are being run in the background to help you as the DevOps, SRE, tech support person to figure out what the reason, or why did my Redshift cost spike?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. All right. So those are the questions for today. Again, what we tried to show here today was really how can you set up how can you use tooling from unSkript to be able to not only set up some alerts to know when things might be going awry in your AWS account with the different services, but also helping you understand why they're going awry. Again, a lot of this is just a lot of busy work that people normally have to do. So it's not so much like just the alarms themselves, but once you get an alarm, what do you have to do to figure out the reason why? And a lot of these things are just manual steps that people do. in order to kind of figure out the answer, and it can be a real waste of time for most folks. So the intent here is to show you how you can take those manual steps that are typically very laborious and just waste a lot of time and bring them into an automated tool that can just kind of give you the results when that alarm goes off, so that you can know what to do pretty quickly thereafter as to how to solve the problem. In this case, how to bring down the costs of an EC2, how to bring down your EC2 costs overall when they spiked. If you want to learn more about unSkript, just unSkript.io, unSkript.com, and you can learn more there on the website. If you have questions, Doug, we don't have a slide here, but if any questions, does anybody want to reach out to you over email? Doug is the head of developer relations here at unSkript. So Doug, you want to maybe just give your email real quick?
Sure. I'm Doug at unSkript.com. If you look me up online, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Twitter. Doug Sillers, just about everywhere.
Okay, great. And that's unSkript, unSkript.com. All right, thanks everybody for joining, and we will see you same time, same day of the week, next Wednesday at noon Central Time. Thanks for joining.
Thanks.